And it is very coincidental you are asking me this question, and I was watching Cecil B. DeMille's dramatization of the Ten Commandments only the day before yesterday. And there is a single scene that I love when Moses has now come back from the mountain of the Lord. He is carrying the 2 tablets of the 10 commandments. And before he descends down, there is Joshua who is meeting him halfway. And down at the valley, there is his brother Aaron, who has been overwhelmed by the sons of Korah and Dathan. And they are worshiping a golden calf. And as he comes, Joshua tells him, the people have been attacked. And he said, no, those are the sounds of celebration and revelry. The people have rebelled against God. And he comes and stands with the 2 tablets of the 10 commandments. And Miriam says, that is Moses, he has returned. And Dathan tells you, you have come with laws that you may be a lord over us. We are free. And Moses says, there is no freedom outside of the law. Freedom must be within the law. And that law is not just law, it's even moral law. It is all laws of morality, all laws that define us as human beings. We have abused the environment. We have abused morality. We live in a world where truth is now, truth depends. Everything can be true. That is the world, the moral world in which we live. There is no moral compass. There is, it used to be said that, it's James Lowell who said, truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne, but that scaffold sways the future. But behind the deep unknown standeth God, watching over his own. And I think that there is a sense.
Can you speak English?
I'm quoting Lowell. And effectively what he's saying, that God is ever present in our life. And during this moment, we have seen all these things. I've heard Dolly Parton's famous song, Hello God, where Dolly Parton is asking God, are you still there? Have we wronged you so much that you are no longer listening to us? So it has also made us reflect about life, about the role of the church in our societies, about our very being as spiritual beings, because even the church has changed. For the first time in my lifetime, we don't go to church. We can't go to the church buildings. The church, of course, is, but we don't go to church. We are worshiping through technology. Once again, you are talking about, is this the new normal? That in the near future, the televangelists found it a lot earlier than all other traditional churches. So in a nutshell, I'm saying that the spiritual dimension of these things cannot be dismissed. There is a sense in which God is also sending us a message. And he has sent message throughout the ages. And it is our duty to go back and reflect and do that which is good and right. Because history has demonstrated, as I've said many times, you go throughout the ages when people had rebelled against God, there was a way in which God visited them with pain and pestilence. These are those times, even if you deny it, this is, God is sending us a message. And the sooner we realize that there is a spiritual dimension to things, the safer we will be. It is not immunity from death. Death is appointed unto all of us, but let us die in the comfort that we'll rejoin our Maker in a state of peace and tranquility.
Prof, do you see us ever going back to the crowded churches?
Human memory is short and selective. We will. In my view, I think in about 2-3 years, the stadia will be full in Europe and everywhere else. In a few years, we'll go back to our churches. In a few years, we'll go back to our dancing halls. In a few years, we'll go back to our political rally. In fact,
no, I think in a few months. For me, I think in a few months.
In Burundi, they had political rallies. In Korea, they had an election with 66% turnout, the highest in the last 28 years. So human memory is short and selective. And in as much as we'll have a new normal, I think God is also deliberate that he allows us in his own divine and mystical way to block certain things in our head and to live as if certain things had never happened to us.
True.
And we just go back, redefining culture and other things.
It's been redefined.
You
It's
look
been
at, we've had this conversation with you about how we bury people in different parts of the world. I mean, that has changed.
Which part of the world are you referring to? Just say Nyanza.
Not necessarily. Even
Just say our home.
In Kenya, our home, and in amongst the Luhya people today. You know, I was thinking about the business of catering. I mean, one of the things that has been happening recently in Nyanza is that when you lose somebody, we talk about giving that person a befitting. The word that is known by everybody in Nyanza is a befitting send-off.
Yeah.
And that meant, among other things, that you had a dome.
Yes.
That meant, among other things, a marquee. And you now have television and chefs and other things, and your typical average funeral in Nyanza and Western, and progressively it was beginning to catch up even in Central Province and Rift Valley.
Yeah.
On average, 1.5 million, because it is a full 5-course meal.
Yeah.
In the last few months, we have budgets of 50,000 shillings, 20,000 shillings, which tells you that that is the new normal. So
when you're saying that we'll go back to the big stadiums, are you also saying that we'll go back to the big funerals?
In certain cases, it may be. You know, somebody was telling me, I don't know whether it was you, was telling me that some of the most powerful people are going to those who are organizing funerals. In order to be included in the list of those who are attending funerals, if the maximum number is 15 to be included.
I lost my mother-in-law end of February. And that is just as Corona was beginning to catch up, and of course you contributed. So we had a big funeral, and so when Corona kicked in and people were being buried in interesting fashion, with 15 people and no food, no big gatherings. I told my wife that, in the family, mom is the last person we ever buried in the manner that we sent her off.
And how right you are.
I don't see any other person in the family going to actually benefit from that going forward. But we have to look for opportunity for those who invested in catering to actually...
Because there was a whole economy.
There
was a whole economy that had grown around that. Young men and women who are now employed. Because, I mean, you are typical, if you look at what happens in rural Nyanza and in many parts of Africa, you look at the money that is expended every weekend on funerals. It's in the millions. It's in the millions. The border borders begin to have real work. Every weekend from Wednesday, when the people attending funerals now that is possibly gone. So young people who are in the border business are going to be affected. Those who are supplying water to these funerals are affected. Those who had bought tents, possibly on loan from cooperatives, are going to be affected. Those who have bought this catering equipment are affected. And these are things around which we cannot just close.
Like I can see the lady who worked for us at my mother-in-law's funeral. I mean, the investment she had made. And even the kind of work that she did. I mean, it's amazing. But Prof, let's close with this. And this is controversial globally. I, immediately after the funeral, I mean, beginning March, I was supposed to be presenting at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris. So when I got there, it was cancelled. Then I proceeded on to the US in New York. When I got there, my event in New York had been cancelled, up to including a side event that we were supposed to have at the UN. Then I proceeded on to Toronto, Canada, not to meet with your friend, but for work. 50% of what had gone there had been cancelled. So basically just attended and participated in another meeting. Then I came to DC. At DC, I was supposed to be meeting one of my former colleagues who actually now works with the World Bank, and we were meeting with a team of other people at the World Bank. And I arrived there, the meeting had been canceled because DC was now on a lockdown. So I left, went to Connecticut, and then I think a few days later, I went to California, proceeded on to actually have my meeting there. Arrived at a hotel that would normally has the capacity of almost about 300 people. We were 3 people in that hotel. LA was in a lockdown. Then I came back to New York. This is March. We're still in the space of March, and now we are now moving to March 20-something here.
Yes.
I came back to New York. Was also going to spend a bit of time with my cousin there, who actually is a medical doctor. He's called Dr. Sam Oyugi. And I thought that, you know what, this corona thing, maybe it's safer for me. Because at the time, my flight back to Nairobi had already been canceled because I was coming back through France, Air France. And there were no European flights, flights from Europe to the US. And of course, France had already begun being an epicenter. Then I decided that, you know what, let me spend time with my cousin. In any case, he's a medical doctor, so if I run into any corona issues, he can deal with, or I can go to his hospital. And then I saw this announcement from Minister Kabi that, hey, government has said no more. Wednesday is the last day of any flights from the US. I said, my European flight has been canceled. My flight back through Europe has been canceled. I don't have a ticket with KQ coming back. 24th is the last day. I decided, actually, I think it was 25th. I decided that, hey, let me dash back. Going through New York City, you'd see a ghost town. And that has never happened before. So we came back. When I arrived here, I went to, and I was already clear in my mind, I was going into mandatory quarantine. I was already prepared for it. So I came back. That's why I didn't have a lot of issues. Actually, the only issue that I had in mandatory quarantine, when I discovered that actually freedom is a very important thing. But you are in a hotel room, yes, but you can't step out of the door. Food is brought. By the time you go to the door to pick your food, those who brought it have disappeared. And I think, I then realized that actually my room was being seen as the New York room. So the dreaded room that nobody wanted to be at. Then I went through the process. I got tested. I think on the 12th day, the results came. I was fine. Of course, that's also the fallacy of testing. You can be tested now, the results come out tomorrow, but you see, between now and tomorrow, you can also contract it. But of course, I feel good now. Though I think I need to advise those who have been tested, don't assume that because you've been tested,
therefore you are immune for all time.
Therefore you're immune. I mean, the testing does not really correspond to immunity.
It's not a vaccine.
No, it's not. But psychologically, you might even think
People
that,
think now that I've been tested, I've been vaccinated.
But I was giving you that sort of background to ask you about this situation. That corona is not killing us in Africa.
There are a number of things, and I start by, I belong to a book club, and one of our members is Dr. Frank Njenga, and very early on at the onset, he wrote a piece that we then discussed as lay people, and he as the professional. And he posed, is there a possibility that corona is not as virulent as it is in Africa because of a number of factors? And he posed, is it possible that the weather in Africa is a factor in this regard? This he did not pose, but we discussed, is it possible that because we in Africa continued to receive BCG inoculation against tuberculosis, while Europe and America had long said that these are tropical diseases? Is it possible that because we have been ravaged by diseases such as yellow fever, malaria, and Ebola and others, our immune system is a little bit better than it is in Europe? Number 4, is it possible because we have a younger population, therefore we have a mild version of corona, and that is why we are asymptomatic, and that possibly others did contract it in its mild form and it disappears? And I think that those are issues that cannot be discounted. Because if you look at the whole impact of corona in Africa, I mean, you can't even, if you look at the total number of people that have tested positive, as against, some may say that our testing has not been robust. But if it were otherwise, people would be dropping dead in the streets of Africa.
I mean,
people are not dropping dead.
No.
That tells you that there is a possibility that this strain of coronavirus, now christened COVID-19, has a very minimal impact on us in this continent, partly because of the reasons that I've already articulated before, and for reasons perhaps that we do not know as yet. And that therefore, this was a virus that acquired its potency amongst the Chinese and Caucasians. I know of the narrative that more American of color are dying out of it, but the question is it because of other underlying causes and not simply because of COVID-19? So I want to say that, and I hope that I'm right in saying this, that it appears that COVID-19 is not as virulent in Africa as it is in other parts of the world. And let me give you a few examples. If you go to the slums of Luanda in Angola, or the slums of Nairobi in Kenya, or the slums of Dar es Salaam, or the slums of Uganda, or the slums of Nigeria. In Makoko, and you look at those environments, and we know that there is Lagos is also the epicenter in Nigeria. People would have been dropping like flies in Makoko, but they are not. The social distancing in those places is not there. In fact, even if you wanted to social distance in Mukuru Kwanjenga, or in Kawangware, or in any other, or Obunga in Kisumu, or in Kibra, you can't. But they are not dropping like flies. Somebody was saying, half in jest, half in seriousness, why is it that our street boys, the Machinga in Dar es Salaam and in Nairobi, are not being found dead? and we say this tongue in cheek, but I think that there may very well be that this particular virus is not as virulent as it is in other parts of the world. And President John Joseph Pombe Magufuli has gone on air as at yesterday that he was beginning to doubt the test. And he gave an example that they, with these experts,
tested popo
juice, some samples from goats and sheep, and the doctors, those who are doing the test, actually returned
some positive
goats as positive.
Popo was positive.
Some indeterminate, which calls into question the testing kits that are being donated to us. I am very happy that Eritrea yesterday rejected the testing kits that had been donated by Jack Ma. And it has been proven even in the United States of America that some of these testing kits and even the PPEs that are being supplied by the Chinese to the rest of the world are not up to scratch. So in a nutshell, I think, and I pray I'm right, pray and hope that I'm right, that this particular strain is not as virulent in Africa as it is in other parts of the world.
Prof, that is what, dovetailing from that, to me, this is what keeps me awake. That even though COVID-19 might be mild in the African context and continent, and that maybe because of the health issues we've been exposed to, our bodies have developed a certain level of immunity that sort of actually protects us. which is not the reason actually for us to even, relax on the protocols. And I like what the government is doing. But before I say what I want to say, it's also important that actually when we are questioning these test kits, we then should actually be doing a lot more to empower our institutions to actually develop them. And that is why I like the aspect of masks. We now have, capacity to actually generate our own.
Yeah, we can now improve on the quality.
Yes, yeah, we can improve on that. What keeps me awake at night with regard to a possible strand of coronavirus that can wipe out Africa?
Hey.
In other words, I really would caution us that our investment in health, let COVID-19 be a wake-up call for us, assuming that not everyone is awake, because I see some behaviors that tells me that people are not awake yet, and that's horrible. Even the way, the way some people in government still work, the way people in private sector still operate and behave, that corruption is still alive in our system. I mean, I really don't understand why somebody would still be keen around issues of corruption or tolerate that. But this pandemic should be a wake-up call for Africa that should a similar or stronger strand come, call it COVID-20. I think we will be, the way we are developing masks will be manufacturing body bags. And that is where, to me, the investment in research should actually go in the health space. That's guarding that. Because COVID, really investing in COVID really should not be. We should be investing on something more serious than COVID, because the potential of that striking Africa is there, and I don't think that we can survive it.
I can't agree with you more that COVID has exposed our underbelly in the health sector. Yeah. It has demonstrated to us that what we call hospitals are actually apologies for such institutions. And that going forward, we must invest in that sector in terms of reallocating our resources in what do we give, simply not just for dispensaries, and I'm talking about the public health sector, not the preventive aspect of it. The public health sector is going to be very important. One of the things that COVID-19 has done, whether it is in terms of preventing COVID or not, but simple hygiene, just washing hands. The direct impact of washing hands we may not know, but perhaps diseases relating to diarrhea maybe have reduced dramatically. Remember, people are not going to hospital. Perhaps it is because we are now washing hands, we are now sanitizing, we are now, those with asthma are now getting it in terms of pollen and that. There are other invisible things that are not as obvious as they normally would be, perhaps because, so that level of hygiene, I think, is a good thing. Now, we've got to ask ourselves, we put a lot of money in military infrastructure. In truth, we are being told that the next wars that are going to be fought is going to be viruses and bacteria, and those ones we don't kill with guns. If we know that, then we had better enter into that arena. The second thing is in research. Research and development is critical. What are we going to do with our Camrys of this world? The other area of research is in pharmaceuticals. We used to have a very vibrant Dawa pharmaceuticals. Going forward, we have to not only complain when we hear the British are going to try a vaccine in Kenya or the French are going to try a vaccine in Senegal. We must be in a position where we can have our own vaccines. And I'm very happy, as I've said before, with the Madagascar people. Why? We must start somewhere. We are now taking it by the bottle. It's now the duty of that we can reduce it into a tablet form without compromising potency. Research must start somewhere. And I'm aware that, for example, the African Union has now established 5 centers for disease control. There is one in West Africa, which is based in Nigeria. There's one for Central Africa, which is based in Zambia. There is one for East Africa, which is based in Nairobi. There is one for Northern Africa, which is based, I think, in Egypt. And I think that if we continue on that trajectory, we've got to strengthen by way of funding, not just creating infrastructure where you have a CEO and 5 skeleton staff who are earning salaries and waiting for money from Denmark and Norway. The African Union and the African Development Bank must know that we are not going to realize Agenda 2063 or the dividends of the African Continental Free Trade Area if we have COVID-19 or COVID-23 in the next few years. So going forward, our preparedness in the area of public health must be to prepare for the next pandemic. And you are shy to say this. There are those who actually believe that the African population should be reduced. Should be reduced. And I was listening to a debate yesterday that we know, of course, President Trump was saying that this may have escaped from the virology center in Wuhan, but doctors are saying that it appears that this virus breached the human-animal divide, and therefore the weight of the evidence is that it did not escape. But whatever the case may be, we know that there are laboratories in the world which are re-engineering bacteria, and either by design or by accident can actually release those viruses into the continent of Africa. Going forward, I hope that the agenda of the AU, the agenda of East African Community, SADC and ECOWAS is going to prioritize health as a critical area going forward, because it is only a healthy population that is going to be an engine for trade and commerce.
Prof, let's leave it here. We'll have more discussions, but this time we will. I'm hoping that we'll have it. We'll have it on Zoom.
Yes.
You now know how to use Zoom.
I'm quite tech savvy now. Now when you talk Zoom, I'm Zoom itself. When you talk blue jeans, I'm blue jeans itself. When you talk
WebEx,
I'm WebEx, I'm all these things. That is part of
Microsoft Teams.
You tried many times to initiate me into technology. You have now succeeded.
No, it took Corona.
Through the
it took COVID-19.
COVID has catalyzed the process, which is a good thing.
You remember that time I wanted you to actually give a talk to the team that I was training, the lawyers that I was training in Mombasa, and your team and my team could not get here.
But now I think, I mean, in the last, since Friday, I've been using technology, and to good effect. I mean, I'm amazed at what, in fact, there is something that you want us to escape from discussing, but I think even if it is off camera, we should.
No, the camera is still on,
you know,
I believe.
Many governments are going to save themselves money through meetings that were never necessary. I look forward, actually, that the UN General Assembly is going to be held through Zoom or through all these per diem earning meetings. People are only going to attend meetings which are absolutely necessary. Because CHOGM has now been postponed, which was to be in Kigali, Rwanda. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody says we can actually do CHOGM via
online.
Because African leaders have been meeting, AU have been meeting online, East African community leaders met online, West Africa online, SADC online.
I believe the president has been holding cabinet meetings online.
Cabinet subcommittees online. So that tells you that those who are defining their lifestyles through per diems must now look for other sources of income.
What's your advice? You know, the other day I came to your office, and it's a huge office.
Yes.
I think there's a whole corridor, like 30 meters. I don't know where you go. Maybe that's where you do your exercise.
30 meters is an exaggeration, but it's...
I mean, what do you advise your friends I know you usually call yourselves learned people,
Yes,
lawyers.
indeed. Yes.
I don't know why.
Yeah, because we are the only profession actually.
Yeah. And you're trying to be serious about the
No,
explanation.
no, this is actually serious because there were only three. Traditionally, there were only three noble professions.
Yeah.
It was the clergy,
Okay.
and then
Which I'm one. So,
yeah. So you are.
Yeah.
So you then the law, then the doctors.
Okay.
Yeah. So these were learned professions because lawyers, even when they don't know anything, they pretend to know it.
What would you advise them in the current scenario? Actually, when I was training you guys, let me call you guys,
Yes.
because I was doing, my current occupation is in the space of cybersecurity.
Yes.
That is through the Cybersecurity Institute, which I founded. And you participated in a lot of my trainings to the lawyers. And one of the efforts that we're also making is actually, engage with the justice system, the court side of things, to actually go digital. I'm quite impressed that they have embraced that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it actually took COVID for them to move in that direction. But there's also the aspect of vulnerability in terms of the hackers, hacking into some of those systems. But that is why people like us are here in the cybersecurity space. but what I want you to address as we close, and this is what we're going to close with, and actually your last comment in this is what will end this discussion or this chat. How should your learned friends now operate, even from an office space point of view? Use of technology, use of office space, because like I saw Harvey, who is a good friend of mine, the president of LSK, basically raising funds to support lawyers to actually even pay rent. And I know the challenge.
Yes.
2019 was a tough year. There are instances whereby lawyers would even sign up for my training and then back out last minute because they're not being paid and all of that. How should they re-engineer their entire business going forward post-COVID?
I think the COVID-19 environment has really changed many things. We have been asked to work from home. So that in the last 2 months, many lawyers, I'm speaking about lawyers, other professionals can speak about other professions, have had to operate from their houses. And yet they rent office space. And I'm sure many lawyers are now asking the question, do we actually need this office space? Is it possible that we can run a law firm off-site so that in your house you ensure that you have the necessary technological technology and your employees also have similar technology in their places of residence, and that you can actually, through this communication, receive instructions. And when you do that, particularly those who are working for institutions such as banks and insurance companies, where you don't actually have to meet the client face to face, and that if you needed to meet your clients, what you needed is just office which you can rent on a need basis. So that what you will do, with the lawyer of the future is simply going to have to agree with landlords who will have offices for purposes of meetings if necessary, and your client can go to those offices and through technology can communicate with you and receive instruction, and the fees is also paid through bank transfers. I think there are many things that have happened which is going to really make the legal profession, like indeed any other profession, to rethink that 5,000, 6,000 square feet that people have in town, for which you pay rents of 2 million a month, are possibly going to be rendered useless, which then tells you that it's going to have a great impact on physical office spaces in Nairobi and in urban areas, so that area may not be the area of investment. So in a nutshell, I can't agree with you more. The judiciary is already moving in that direction. I hope that that will be expanded throughout the country. The registries are also having to be called to follow the same thing. The land registry, the office registries, or rather the company's registry. And in the next 5 years, I think some of us will now be getting out of the profession, but the young lawyer, the question that you did not ask, but is a subtext, which calls into question, how are we going to train our young men and women in the legal profession at the universities? The universities must now also prepare. That the kind of lawyer that they are going to produce must be a lawyer who is technologically savvy. That is the way of the future. That is the new normal.
Oh, man. I mean, we have to reimagine everything.
Indeed.
Where is your mask?
My mask is in my